Everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to keep your brain sharp, how to encourage cognitive function and better development, and as well as how to prevent that sort of decay and memory loss that inevitably leads to things like dementia or other mental afflictions. It's not just something for older folks. This is something that we should take seriously right from the ages of development through our working years. There's a lot we can do to keep our brains functioning well and prevent a lot of issues in the future. So we're going to dive into the world of neuroplasticity, big fancy word. As usual, we got tons of videos and imagery to break it all down, and we're going to show you some applications that you can use in your personal life to take full advantage of your brain's fullest potential. So it's going to be an interesting and unique show. Thanks again for joining us all. Thank you, chat room. We love seeing you here. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Qualm Matter Podcast. My name is Louis Borges. Joining me as always, my good friend and co-host, Mr. Marquise Williams.
What's up, Louis? Let's do this. This is the very dear topic for me. This one and the next topic we're going to talk about next episode, but let's focus on this one. I'm really excited about this one. I got a lot of information to share. I know you do too. So,
yeah, and I actually found that there wasn't a whole lot in the world of good content in terms of videos, podcasts, things like that on this topic. So I thought this is a unique thing. It's something we can all benefit from. I mean, who doesn't want to maintain their mental status and their health and functioning ability? Who doesn't want to increase that? I mean, if you're working in the business world, you'll spend money on advertising and new software and maybe hire new staff, people with new ideas, all this stuff to try to generate more. But what if you could just do that in your own mind? What if you could improve the health of your brain, how it functions, get rid of bad habits, rewire new patterns, do some easy games, puzzles, and tricks and things like that, that in an everyday, lifestyle is not hard to incorporate. But what if something very simple as doing a few practices or exercises every day could not only improve your cognitive function, help children develop faster, better, achieve their fullest potential, and also as you age, keep your mind sharp so you don't get sort of rusty, so to speak, and don't wind up with things like early onset dementia and other things, right? I mean, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that has never been more true when it comes to cognitive function. So exciting show. Thank you, everybody who's watching right now on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the UNX Network. We are very proud to be the only science technology show on the UNX Network. It's predominantly paranormal, but to scratch that itch and get your weekly dose of science, thank you, everybody, for tuning into Quantum Matter Podcast. And we are very proud that we are sponsored by H2 Water Expert. They are the experts in water filtration and hydrogen enrichment. If anybody has heard about this or has questions, or if they're interested, check out h2waterexpert.com or click the link in the description. And our friend Shane is more than happy to answer any questions you have. There's no charge. He's just a great guy and believes in the product. And Marquise, I know you've got yours about a week or so ago. I've had mine for 2 weeks. What do you think? I mean, I've been vocal on these things. I've been all over social like, wow, this is amazing. I mean, it's just water. Yeah. I feel like this is a midlife crisis. I had the cars and the fun when I was younger. Now I'm 40. I don't care about the cars anymore. I'm into hydrogen water machines and air filtration. I mean, I'm old, but a lot of this has come from the show, things we've researched, stats we learned about. You can't just turn a blind eye anymore when you know that, hey, our water's crap and my indoor air is worse than the outside air. Like, we have kids, if you have the means, you're going to do something about that. And I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on your new machine? How have you been liking it?
Oh my gosh. So I can tell. Okay, so let's start with this. Okay, when I first started drinking the water, I tried the settings you told me to. I had to learn a lot of that from you. I was like, it's water, it's probably going to be cleaner. It's not really going to make much of a difference in terms of how I feel about myself, but I know I'll be at least drinking clean water instead of as you saw the one episode we did with Shane, how high my toxicity levels were.
Yeah.
And the most important thing for me, especially with drinking as much as I have, I drink more water now. I drink a liter in the morning when I first wake up. I drink a liter after my first meal, and then I drink the other 2 liters I try to drink the next 2 liters throughout the day. And I've noticed that first of all, I'm able to maintain a wakeful, I don't know, like, even though I still have exhaustion, I'm not saying that I'm never going to be tired. I can still have that mindful wakeness, like where I'm not groggy and my mind isn't clear and I can't think or I don't want to do anything. That's gone. Now, at the very end of the day, I still crash, but that's because now I'm more productive throughout the day when it comes to the stuff that I
Sure.
want to do. And like I said, man, my life is crazy because not only do I work full time, I have the other things that I do. I have my kids, and at the very end of the day, I actually can do all the things that I want to do, spend the time that I want to with my family, the little bit of time that I do have left at the end of the day, and I'm good. I feel okay. I'm not like so tired I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And I honestly, the only change that I've made is the water. I
Yeah.
know it sounds crazy. I don't want to sound,
Yeah,
um,
and what we're talking about are these little machines here. These are referred to as ionizers. There are a lot of companies out there that sell them. Some are good, some are not so good. There's varying reasons why the good ones are good and the bad ones are bad. Most of them just produce hydrogen or alkaline water. The alkaline alone is not really what makes it effective. It's the actual dissolved hydrogen. But this unit both filters. There's got two giant canister filters in it, like this, and 16 stages. So not only is it filtering your tap water, and it's on demand. You don't have to fill a tub. You don't have
mhm.
to buy
Yep.
distilled water. It does it on demand for you. It makes a whole bunch of additional waters acidic and alkaline, but it's the hydrogen that's produced in the process of ionization. You're running water over electricity plates. It's going to get charged up with the hydrogen. And the three major benefits, and again, there's thousands of medical studies on this. If you're interested in this, go to the Molecular Hydrogen Institute. They are the foremost experts on all of that. It started in Japan about 15, 20 years ago. They really started doing the studies on that sort of thing and found that they thought originally it was alkaline water making people healthier, like from Lourdes, France, and things like that. But they later come to find out the higher pH was as a result of more dissolved hydrogen. And that's actually where the health benefits. And the three main things are inflammation, oxidation, and gut health. So if
Mhm.
you suffer from any conditions associated with that, you should consider getting some type of hydrogen in your life or diet. It'll certainly make a difference. So, not to dwell on it, but we love our machines. We like them. We use them a lot. Our families use them. It's a cool toy. And again, this is the new midlife crisis of the new age. Might as well get healthy, right? I don't want
Yeah,
to.
man.
I've always
Yeah.
been in great health. I've always been able to eat whatever I want, even if that was junk food every day. I was still athletic. I never gained weight. I've been very fortunate, but that doesn't mean my internals are any good from 40 years of punishment and all that as
Mhm.
well, right? You can't see what cholesterol looks like or hypertension and blood pressure, stuff like that. Thankfully, I'm still good, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as the old adage goes. Why not get healthy? And it doesn't have to mean that, oh, now I got to go to the gym 7 days a week. Like, that's hard. I can't incorporate that cold
No,
turkey. But
no.
what
Yeah.
small things can I do? So, yeah, inflammation, um, free radicals, detoxifying, things like that. Look into it. It's fascinating. We won't talk too much more about it, but we give it our full stamp of approval. So,
100%.
talking about all this healthy stuff, go ahead. Did you have something to
No,
say?
I mean, I was agreeing with you, and again, I feel, at least initially, it's only been a week, but um, I feel great. Again, I'm still normal me. Again, me. I was more tired before I had all this extra stuff than I am now, and I'm doing far more. So that's
Yeah.
the biggest
And
difference that
like
I know.
anything, like any supplement you start taking or any therapy you do, obviously check with
Mhm.
a physician first. This is just water, so feel free to or not. I mean, I give it to my 2-year-old and there's not an issue with it, right? So it's not medical advice or anything like that, but take a look in it. And with anything, there are benefits from obviously just drinking enough water in a day in itself, but there's a lot of other benefits that go along with removing toxins, and the energy is a big one. A lot of people say that. I noticed that myself. And you won't really see anything for minimum 6 weeks, I would say. There's no magic cure overnight. Wow, wake up and feel better. Placebo can do that. If I give you a pill and I tell you tomorrow you will feel better, if I give that to 1 million people, 30% are going to wake up tomorrow and feel better, right? Placebo is a real thing. Your brain is a powerful healing agent, and we're fascinated by the mind, and that brings us to today's episode. So for those who aren't familiar with neuroplasticity, what does that mean? What does that look like? Why should I give a damn? Let's get started.
Do you know, through experience, the structure of your brain changes? This phenomenon is referred to as neuroplasticity. What is neuroplasticity? To put it simply, it is a mechanism that the nervous system uses to either strengthen commonly used synapses or weaken synapses that are rarely used. You might wonder, how does it work? There is a common misconception that when you strengthen a neural pathway using neuroplasticity, the brain adds more neurons to that area. But that is not the case. The brain merely adds more proteins to the synapses of the existing neurons, therefore allowing for more frequent and consistent activation of the appropriate neurons. Do you know?
So I got some thoughts already. So this was actually a topic of importance to me many, many years ago when I first started my journey as just a thinking, an adult who wanted to truly understand what's going on in the world. And that was the brain science, learning how to be more introspective, which, by the way, I have an entire thing to talk about a little bit later today about introspection and how important that is for you, just overall. But the one thing, the one thing that I wanted to mention about neuroplasticity is just to kind of follow up with that video, is that it's your brain's ability to essentially reorganize or to create these new connections, like the video said, in different areas of your brain that you're using it. So you have to use it, of course. And as you're using certain abilities that you have naturally, cognitive abilities, like, for example, reading or any kind of thinking that you do, whether it be visualization techniques, whether it be pretty much actually anything that you do, anything at all, you're improving that part of your brain, the part of your brain that's not as plastic or as adaptable to those different situations. Now you're improving those functions or enhancing them by doing them. And again, the more you do them, the more dense those connections are, the more connections you have to improve that ability. And sometimes it improves abilities that you didn't know you have. So ambient abilities, and I'm talking about cognitive functions, not supernatural powers, by the way, just to be clear.
Yeah. And essentially we're talking about these. This is a diagram of neurons in your brain. The adage is neurons that wire together, fire together. So if you start creating patterns, it's like with exercise. At first, it feels awful. Your body tells you to stop because it doesn't really understand.
Right.
But within a month, 2 months, 3 months, repetition and consistency, you start to get a rush out of that. You start to crave that. You start to feel weird if you don't do that. Even with habits, if you're trying to kick an addiction like cigarettes or alcohol or anything like that, this is a way of rewiring your brain. I mean, the brain is just a chemical receptor, produces and receives signals. So if you can rewire that relationship between how you feel and substances, or how you feel in people, even depression, anxiety, and all that, there are therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, which we might get into by the end, which address that. It's your relationship between your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and even your physical body. How you get that like butterfly feeling in your stomach? That's all as a result of chemicals produced from your brain. So essentially, we're talking about fixing it at the source, realizing that maybe there's been traumas in the past. Some people maybe had cognition issues, brain injuries, people that have a lot of concussions or CTE or things like that. There are ways of even recovering people that have had traumatic brain injuries using some of the tools and tips that we're going to give you in today's show.
Yeah.
But in essence, the definition of, there are many definitions of neuroplasticity, but basically we're looking at it from the sense of the ability of the brain to change its structure or function in response to an experience, something new, the capacity of the nervous system for adaptation or regeneration after trauma, and the ability of your central nervous system to undergo structural and functional changes in response to new experiences. So this is basically rewiring your body and your mind to do what you wanted to do. And you put the emphasis in the areas that you want to improve. And it's totally up to you, the person, right? And I've got some videos because I think the doctors and the neurosurgeons, and I have some, neuroscience students, they are, 7 years into about 12 years of study. They know this far greater than we do. We are researchers. We spent about 2 weeks researching this topic, but to fill in the gaps that we don't know or maybe have missed, these videos are a big help. So here's another quick one on sort of explaining this a little further. What exactly is neuroplasticity?
One of the mechanisms of neuroplasticity is becoming even better at something that you're really good at, and that's happens through myelination. Myelin is a fatty substance that coats some neural pathways, and those pathways become fast pathways. The most common one, which is something that you're quite good at, but you maybe don't have loads of time, happens through synaptic connection. So that's the one that can feel like quite hard work, but if you put in the effort, then you can change your brain. So that means that neurons that already exist in the brain connect up with each other and start to form new pathways. And the third mechanism, which doesn't happen a lot in the adult brain, but it does happen around the hippocampus because we do lay down new memories in life, happens a lot in children's brains, is called neurogenesis. And that is little embryonic nerve cells that float around in the brain actually becoming fully formed nerve cells, neurons, and connecting up through synaptic connection and maybe getting myelinated. And there's a factor, a growth factor that's involved in that, the embryonic cell becoming an adult cell, which is called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And trophic means growth, so neurotrophic is growth of neurons. And the things that contribute mostly to that are aerobic exercise and eating dark-skinned foods. Yeah.
Dark-skinned foods?
Yeah. Let me just cover the exercise one first, because this is one of my fun facts, which is that if you are regularly doing aerobic exercise, the turnover of those cells in your brain is about 13-14%.
So like the amount and the speed in which they like die off?
No, the speed in which they go from embryonic to full-grown cell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we want neurogenesis to happen.
Okay.
If you haven't been doing exercise for a while and then you start, the rate of cell turnover is like 30%. So it increases after a period of inactivity with new aerobic exercise. So that's my excuse for like being a couch potato half the time and then starting up again.
If I'm trying to speak a different language, by doing exercise, that has an impact on...
Oh, it'll help you learn and retain memories, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I have too much to say. I'm going to try to condense my thoughts here. The first thing is this, the term that I had to really, the myelination, which is kind of that's a brand new term for me, especially with this topic. So essentially it's just your brain's ability to create, not just create new connections, but improve the speed with which those connections, or the efficiency of those connections in your brain. So essentially they make the road smoother so that those neurons that are traveling across or between each other, they're better, they're smoother, the connections are better. Another thing I want to talk about is the idea of threshold, which we're going to talk about, in the next episode. But there's this idea, or not idea, but there's this process in your brain, or reaction, or whatever you want to call it, of a threshold that once you experience something that causes stress, whether it be good stress like exercise, as she mentioned with the cardiovascular exercise, or whether it be stress from life, like stress at work, or stress from family or friends, or whatever it may be, social pressures, your brain has a threshold. There's a threshold with which you can keep or maintain some poise, where you can handle that stress, your resilience to that stress, which is your ability to kind of bounce back from whatever it may be. If you keep encountering that stress, two things can happen. If it's good stress, your body will naturally reorganize itself, and whether it be muscularly or especially neurologically, to create new stronger, better everything, neural pathways, muscles, all that, right? To make sure that the next time you do it, you have a greater threshold. It's very small, but it's incremental. And over time, which is why you have to keep doing something, whatever it is you want to do. We'll talk about the 10,000 hour rule, but you have by doing these things over and over and over again, repetitively, nonstop, every day, if you will, you'll develop mastery. And that's where the 10,000 hour rule comes into play, which again, we'll talk about later. But if you deal with negative stress that you can experience some kind of a trauma from, then the exact opposite happens. It actually hurts that threshold. It kind of fractures the threshold and makes you feel like you can't get past it. But there are ways to which we'll get to that later. There are ways to help to kind of recover from that and to make your thresholds better.
Yeah, and it's odd. Like it's exactly what you were just saying, that the same things that can produce growth in a positive way, if your body interprets it as a negative, it can actually prevent that. And the whole myelin is basically taking a neuron connection. The brain sort of, this is a simplified explanation, but the
Yes.
brain basically says, hey, I'm going to use this often. We need this. Let's make this a superhighway because we go there often.
Yep.
So when you're doing that with cognition or, with good sleeping patterns and things like that, it helps the brain effectively to do what it wants to do already. And, we have oxidative stress in our body. Just the mere process of burning calories produces waste. And with that waste, you have some free radicals and things like that. And every antioxidant in the world, including like vitamin C and orange juice or, chemical ones, or even things like hydrogen, the whole point is to bond with these neutral particles. They're not negative or positive. So things have a hard time bonding with them and your body can't get them out. And you have oxidative stress in your brain. And it's ongoing because we're always breathing. We're taking in oxygen, producing CO2, burning calories. There is a waste product. So what she mentioned there with the whole aerobic exercise thing, not only is it good for your heart, your blood vascular system, your muscles, all that stuff, but your brain actually benefits from that as well with that spike in those regenerations from baby cell to fully developed cell. Right. And we mentioned neurons before. This is what we mean by neurons, like a neural network. And this is what we mean by synapses.
Yep.
Let me get rid of the neural network here. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Synapses. So within these neurons, this is how they communicate. This is where chemicals and information are exchanged. So the synapses are like the telephones within this neural highway full of synapses, full of these guys.
Yeah.
And this is a better shot of kind of what it looks like. So here's a neural network before training. And we're not talking just physical. These could be mental drills, ways of thinking, patterns, different therapies. 2 weeks after stimulation, look in the middle. You got a lot more connections. You have new dendrins, or those little spider webs that weren't there before. And then 2 months after stimulation, look at image 3 compared to the first. It's night and day, right? It's like double or triple. So the brain not only needs this, it wants this. And it doesn't mean everybody has to go exercise. If you're physically limited in your ability to do this, there are other ways to exercise your brain, not just aerobic. So let's see, what else do we got here, Marquise? Do you want to do types of therapy, or you want to do the principles of neuroplasticity?
Principles. Let's talk about so let's get the stuff that people might feel is dry out first. Then we'll get to the good stuff. I think it's all good, but for not everybody thinks that this data is like really interesting. If you do, by the way, that's awesome. You're a nerd like us, but some people don't. So we love you still. Let's get the dry stuff out of there. Let's get that stuff out of the way first, because
we'll go fast. We didn't you know us. If any of you watch more than one of our shows, we don't spend too long on just about anything. We rifle through it here. So let's get started. So there's 10 basic principles. Again, I mentioned earlier, use it or lose it. Neural circuits that are not actively engaged in a task performance or for extended periods of time begin to degrade. Here's an example. They were feeding people with a tube. And then after they, months and months were on a tube, their body actually forgot how to swallow. So the patient had to, undergo some therapies just to learn how to swallow again, because it never had to do that. So if you don't use it, you lose it. Number 2 principle is use it and improve it. So training that drives a specific brain function can lead to an enhancement of that function. So the stroke patient who may have lost use of the left side of their body, they might be neglecting that side or not using it because it's too difficult. But in a treatment setting, a technique known as constraint-induced movement can be used to restrain the arm of the non-affected side. So basically, if your left arm is not working, you tie down the right, forcing your brain to have to rewire as much as it can to that limb out of necessity, because the right arm can't do it. So it's going to go with the quick and easy. Okay, left arm doesn't work, go with the right. Brain is always in survival mode. But there are ways of helping people just by understanding that about the brain. Third one, specificity. So basically, whatever you're trying to achieve, the training that you're doing has to be specifically tailored to that. So like doing bicep curls isn't going to necessarily help a stroke victim because it's not responding to the same area of the brain that's been affected. So specificity is very important. Repetition matters. Marquise, you mentioned at 10,000 hours. You'll get into that in a bit. But we all know this, whether it's getting rid of a habit, creating a new habit, or doing anything that's really going to stick, whether it's weight loss exercise, improving your brain function, repetition definitely matters. Intensity matters. Same with exercise. You can't just sit there and use a 5-pound dumbbell and expect to develop massive muscles. It's better than nothing. But the intensity, because like you said, your threshold moves. You get really good at doing 10 push-ups after a week. Now you can do like 20 in a day. Then you can do 100 before long. That's just an example, but your threshold will move. So matching the intensity to be just hard enough so that your brain is getting the effect.
Threshold.
If it's too easy, it doesn't work. So that is repetition matters. Intensity matters. We covered. Time matters. So based on the idea that after an injury, the brain wants to recover. So it makes sense the earlier you provide that opportunity, these neuroplastic changes will benefit from that. So early versus late is definitely better. It's better to do this as a preventative thing than when you're starting to develop signs of dementia or forgetfulness. It's really hard. You can't neglect yourself for 70 years and be like, hey, I should pay attention to that neuroplasticity thing, right? Like start with your kids. Start now. If you're 40, 50, 60, even if you are 80, it's not too late. Salience matters. So the training experience must be sufficiently salient to induce plasticity. So meaning what you take out of it or what your attitude is going into it will affect your recovery. If you think it's BS, none of this is going to work, that actually has an effect, right? If you go into any therapy with a positive outlook, a lot of cancer patients who have looked for alternative therapies, they go at it with a belief that I could be healed from this. They don't go into it with that skepticism because that actually affects the ability for the therapies to work. So salience matters, age matters. So as discussed earlier, younger brains are more plastic and adaptable than older brains. So, keep that in mind if you're expecting overnight results.
Yeah, I got to say, because there are a lot of case studies, which I have too many. I think I've overloaded myself with the case studies. There are case studies that suggest that neuroplasticity can continue throughout your entire life and not only continue, but improve as you get older.
Sure.
But obviously, if you have like any kind of genetic conditions or epigenetic, conditions, I'm not talking about that. Of course, if you have mental disabilities, there are obviously limitations to that. But generally, a healthy brain, a healthy person can, as they get older, improve in their neuroplasticity and not degrade if they're using it. It's all about how soon you use it. That this is the importance of age. The sooner the better. You mentioned this about teaching your kids. The sooner you teach them about these, not necessarily neuroplasticity, but things that involve neuroplasticity, the techniques and learning and reading and storytelling and imagination, all these things, if you start them young, they will continue to develop and strengthen those connections throughout their entire life.
Yeah.
The younger, the better. Just to be clear, I don't want.
And they'll be searching for that. They'll be searching for that enrichment, even if they're, good in school, they'll always be looking for other stuff. They'll be the type of kid that wants to read science docs, or, like they get a rush out of that strain on their mind. They will grow to like learning hard things, doing hard things. Asian cultures are very good at this. I'm not saying they're the only ones, but you look at Japan, Korea, China, even they're very strict, but these kids speak multiple languages. They can play the piano at a very early age. They go to school, they have tutor, then they do math. Like maybe it's a bit too much, and maybe too much for our Western way of living and thinking, but they're extremely overachieving. You go to most medical schools, it's full of Asian students, right? So either their parents whipped them into shape and made them do it and just brainwashed them, or they gave them tools knowingly or not knowingly that just made them studious kids, that maybe they were studious. Maybe they come from a whole line of doctors and the kid just knows by seeing, right? Like that's what we are in this family. Either way, there is something good to be said for, making your mind do more than it wants to do, for staying busy. And like, we'll get into some of these activities, but some of them are, using multiple parts of your brain and senses at the same time. Some of them involve patterns. Some of them involve balance. So we'll explain it all. But the final most important thing is interference. So plasticity in response to one training experience can impede the acquisition of similar behaviors. So when patients are actually able to come in for neurological treatment and that treatment is delayed, they often come in with compensatory behaviors for skill deficits. So if the help that you need is not given when you need it, your brain will make modified shortcuts to do the same thing, but that is not necessarily doing it correctly. So instead of building a strong neural network, it's building a rickety wood bridge over the creek, not an 8-lane highway, and you're not going to get the same result. That will then require sort of that detraining or unlearning the bad habit and training the new habit. And I know that specifically. I've worked in sales for over 20 years. I used to be somebody that always wanted to hire people with lots of experience. Come to find out, half of those people didn't work out because they worked somewhere 20 years. Now, well, we don't do it like that. We never did it like that. How come you want me to do that? My last place didn't want me to do that. Guy has all these bad habits. Like, what do you mean we don't leave 5 minutes early on a Friday night, or we don't help out our coworker? They got all these bad habits that are impossible to untrain somebody without offending them or be a very abrasive relationship. I just start hiring kids out of college, like, nothing about sales, but you got a great attitude, you're hired. And I'd rather teach that from scratch than undo the damage that somebody, a 30-year-long, 40-year-long life of negativity. I can't fix that in a month, 6 months, a year, and we, has to come from the person themselves. They have to want to fix it for it to actually work. This is something that we need to get motivated to do ourselves. Nobody can do any of this for you. And you can start off easily with some games, some tricks, some, easy exercises, and go from there. Like with anything, time, speed, repetition, intensity, your attitude, your mindset towards it, a positive belief that something good will come out of this. Even if that means doing alternate research. Don't just watch this show. Start reading other articles. Go to, proper science-based articles, not just somebody's opinion on TikTok, that kind of thing. It's easy to get excited when you see that there is something to it, and it does work. So that is the end of the dry. Now all the good. So what do you got? What do you want to? Do you want to go over any case studies, Marquise, or do you want me to get into the brain games and things you can do?
We'll go do the brain games, and then we'll talk about the case studies, because there's a lot of them.
So before I get into the games, let's just show some of the applications, what the purposes of these things. Again, here are different factors affecting neuroplasticity. So your social context and environment, meaning your engagement, your education, continued learning, prior knowledge and beliefs, stress, well-being, your exercise and physical activity, your dietary patterns, your sleep patterns, that neurogenesis that the lady described, the growing of new brain cells from, sort of embryonic cells to fully developed cells, structural adaptation, the functional adaptation, and that neural network connectivity. And the whole idea here is to decelerate cognitive decline, slow that down, and help with cognitive and brain reserves, compensation, and scaffolding. So that's the whole point. So you want to create a brain function. That's one area. So meaning you do this with young kids, or if you're learning a new language or learning to play the piano, you're trying to create a new function. Another use is restoring brain function. So people that have had brain injuries or a stroke, hypoxia, drowning victims, people with too many concussions, athletes, that's another option. Improving the brain function, which is where most of us would lie. We are normal, normal function, and we just want to be a little bit better. We want a sharper memory. We don't want to have that brain fog. Even if you've had COVID and you experience symptoms of long COVID, brain fog is a big part of that. And for age concerned people or elderly people, maintaining that brain function is something that you should look into it. There's many ways to do it. Everything from psychology to physio, audiology, sleep training, laser therapies, vision, yoga, facial stretches, having proper eyesight. Your optometry can actually affect how you feel. If you have blurry glasses, you can actually develop migraines just because your eyes aren't getting what they need, right? So
or fatigue.
Yeah. So here's a couple games you can do. So we mentioned getting enough sleep, getting your cardio, eat better, reduce your stress, learn a new task, and play some brain games. Here's a couple examples. So card games, this is card sorting. So you take a 50-card deck and you find the H-free suit, shuffle all the cards, and then choose an order from left to right. So for example, hearts, clubs, diamond, spade, and then memorize that order. And then you take the deck, draw one card at a time, and then sort it face down to where you think the matching suit is. So it's kind of like memory repetition games. There are some easier ones like Boggle. Make as many patterns as words as you can. In this little matrix, it's a time game. So adding that time definitely adds that level of stress, even though it's a game. When the sand counters go in the hourglass, it's like, hurry up, 5 seconds, 4 seconds. Yeah. That sort of created stress actually does something positive. There's bad stress and good stress, but in the context of a game, having
Oh, man.
time, it's a challenge, right? This is
I'm
another
anxious.
game here. It's called Set. I'll be honest, I have no idea how it works. I even tried to find a little more info to present on the show. No idea. It's a game called Set. Apparently, it works great for your neurocognition. That's all I got on that one
Yeah.
there. Tangrams, we've seen this before. There's even some like puzzles with by hand, kind of like a Rubik's Cube is going sort of on this thing. It's giving you, that's a very good one, actually. Play with the Rubik's Cube. Logic puzzles, crosswords, Sudoku, word stories, having cards with different symbols and then flipped over and trying to memorize the order that they were in. Things like Scrabble or bananagrams. They're all good ways. Basically, the brain games. We know what they are. We see them in the store. They're not the Monopoly is a good one too. Monopoly is fairly easy, but causing your brain to find extra words in a scrabbled mess of letters is difficult, right? And my opinion is, Scrabble and card-based games for that type of thing are probably the best that you can do just as somebody who wants to start with this type of therapy. Did you find anything similar to this, Marquise? Games and things
Oh
like that
my
people
God.
play?
Okay. Let me begin. So let's first talk about so people think, for example, when you hear us talk about, oh, you can play games to improve your cognition or your neuroplasticity. By the way, they're not necessarily different. I think that they're symbiotic. Your cognition and neuroplasticity go hand in hand. When you talk about doing games or gamification, if you will, to try to improve these brain functions, you have to there's a couple things you have to really think about that are really important. One of them is attention and intention. So what I mean is, if you think that you can play a game passively, where you're not necessarily attentive to the task that you're doing, you will kind of push that task to a part of the brain that's not interested in developing those pathways that improve the function that you're actually involved in. You'll just waste that energy and that attention. You're wasting time, essentially. So if you're playing solitaire, that's great. But if you're passively playing solitaire, that's not great. You need to be attentive, and you have to have the intention of actually doing what you're doing, which otherwise you're just wasting time. So here's a game that I like to play with the kids. We do this a couple times a week, where they'll close their eyes, or they'll look at an object. And this is a really good technique, by the way. They'll look at an object and they'll study it. I give them 30 seconds to a minute. They'll look every little detail that they possibly can. Then they'll close their eyes and try to see the after image of that object, and then describe it verbally, to actually vocalize that description. When you do this, you're developing essentially these pathways, this ability to conjure images and visualize information that you experience in your real life, and memorize it, and then vocalize that. You're drawing the connection between your visual memory and memory, not just what you see, but what you can remember that you see, and the auditory portion of your brain, which is a very small part of what your real intelligence is. You're drawing a very powerful connection, increasing your intelligence, increasing your cognitive functions, especially when it comes to memory. And of course, you're developing an ability that you may not have had before. It's fantastic. The kids love it. It makes them, feel like they're accomplishing something. Plus, it's a fun game to play because they think they're developing superpowers. But as you get older, you lose that kind of sense of excitement that, oh, I'll be able to do something that's really cool, and it's an ability, and I'll have superpowers. Intelligence is a superpower, and so are these techniques. Kind of give you that superpower, if you will, which is just increased cognitive functions, memory, and things like that. So that's one game. There's another game that we play where I'll ask a question, and it's kind of ambiguous, and they'll try to come up with answers for that question. There is no answer to the question. It's all about getting your brain to think of things that creatively and out of the thin air. Essentially, you're becoming more creative. You're becoming more thoughtful. You're becoming more introspective, which I'll save that for a little bit later, about introspection and the importance of that. And you're developing an ability that you didn't previously see, or you might not have previously had. So these techniques, these are just two of I have so many techniques that we kind of play and practice with improving cognitive functions.
Yeah, anytime you can include two different things at the same time, it gives that distraction factor that puts the strain on the brain. So like this one here, this lady's listening to an audiobook or music, She's also doing a visual maze, and then she's trying to do something with her eyes closed. So she's trying to play taboo or a visual puzzle. It's kind of like Where's Waldo, while listening to music, while speaking Spanish for the first time. You know, like the more things you can do, you know, here's one, somebody's doing a puzzle or a crossword while maintaining balance. So they're standing on one of these hemispheric balls, or they're standing there and they're trying to like balance something else, or they're trying to like write. Like you want to try to engage as many different parts of your brain at the same time that you can. And it, you know, like it's difficult if we're watching TV or we're reading and music's playing. What's the first reaction? Hey, could you turn that off? I'm trying to read. Because your brain's trying to say, hey, like one thing at a time. No, here's 5 things at a time. We're going to figure it out.
Oh
and
my.
It becomes easier as you go. This is not easy, but it does become easier. And then your brain will like the challenge. Like my friend growing up, when I went to school, his dad was like a mathematic genius, but he drove public like transit bus. So I'm like, how are you not a professor? This and that. And he said, basically what he does to pass the time and to stay sharp and not, you know, get into the zone of just doing a monotonous job is he would do formulas in his head. He would give himself an equation to solve and he would solve it visually. Now, mind you, this guy had a lot of intellect and, you know, photographic memory and things like that already. But, you know, you wouldn't suspect that a guy who's just a bus driver is doing advanced algebra and calculus in his mind while driving a city bus. And he's one of the smartest men I've ever had conversations with, like incredibly high intellect. But he understood that the more I can give my brain to do and the better I get at that, there is some benefit. And and this was like 20 years ago that this guy was, you know, telling me this stuff. So
there's some other stuff that so you, because when you mentioned that, it kind of just sparked my attention. This idea that, you know, so memory is probably the most okay, I'm not a scientist or a doctor or a psychologist or anything like that, but from what I understand from the research that I've done, if you're a psychologist, you can correct me in the comment section. Otherwise, you're where I am with this and trying to figure it out. But one thing that I noticed over the years, and especially recently, is that memory is the most important thing when it comes to your ability to just cognitively do things. It's important. Your brain can only focus on 7 points of attention, and I have something here for that. So there is a psychologist named George A. Miller. In 1956, he wrote a paper called "The Magic Number 7 Plus or Minus 2," which essentially it talks about how your brain has a limited ability or capacity to process information, and that 7 points of information plus or minus 2 is what you can focus on at any given time, and use it in the immediate in your immediate experience. However, people who can multitask, by the way, we're talking like looking at something, using your body to kinesthetically, and all these. There's a few things that you wouldn't think that are part of that attention that are not just you're doing one task or another. Each task has multiple different points of attention, and so you're actually limited to how many points of attention you can use. However, through this neuroplasticity, what you're doing is you're training your brain to switch between tasks while memorizing exactly what you were doing previously. It is absolutely phenomenal how anyone can multitask at all, because what they're doing is essentially they're pinning moments of time and then going back and forth between tasks in order to become efficient at those multiple different tasks. If you understood, at least from what I understand, it's phenomenal. It's honestly crazy and weird how we do this. I don't know how we're even able to do multitasking at all, but some people are really good at it, especially
it'd be like running on a treadmill while doing a crossword, while singing the words to a very complicated song all at the same time. That's only 3.
Yeah.
Your brain still has to focus on your balance, where you're running. There's a whole bunch of extra things that your brain has to pay attention to already, but you're getting it in the zone of, hey, we can do more. We can do more. And like you said with the pin, it's like, okay, I'm running on the treadmill. That's on autopilot now. Now I can do a crossword because I don't have to think about running on the treadmill. Now that I'm doing that, hey, let's get some music going. And you'd be surprised at how much you can actually do at the same time and maintain focus, right? And there's no overnight remedy for anything in the world. If anybody's, you know, pitching a pill that you take this and tomorrow you feel better, that's snake oil. Run like hell. There is no such thing.
No.
So in the second half, we want to give people sort of a little more explanation on that mental strain, but also how you can train your brain, how you can change things that you don't like about yourself or things you wish you were better at. We're going to show you some tips on that. Some things that you shouldn't do to protect your brain. So things you should avoid, especially why this is important for kids and athletes. And then we have something on sort of uncertainty, growth, stress, anxiety from our friend Joe Dispenza to close her out. So it's going to be a great second half. Everybody refill those drinks. We're going to type that in the chat like we always do. Refill those drinks. Where's Tim? Tim's always putting little shot glasses. Like it's time to drink. So
yeah, Tim. Like I got my
Mothman says everybody have a drink. We'll see you back here in 5 minutes. And we are back with the second half of Quantum Ladder Podcast. Hope everybody's enjoying our show so far. If you do like our show, please consider subscribing to our channel. We do appreciate that. Leave us your comments. If you're a trained expert in this field, we'd love to hear your feedback or anything you can add to these things. And if you like this episode in particular, give us a thumbs up. Makes a difference and shows us that you care. So give us a little love. We appreciate that. And before the break, we were talking about basically what is neuroplasticity, sort of what are the major things that you can do, or some small tips and tricks. But let's get a little deeper into the idea that strain is necessary and how that works. I have some experts here that can provide some feedback on that. So let's play the clip, and then we'll get some of your opinions on this too, Marquise.
The mental strain you feel when you're learning something is the trigger for neuroplasticity, for your brain to change.
Say that again. The mental strain you feel while doing something is the what?
Is the trigger for neuroplasticity.
Which neuroplasticity allows you to expand your mind to do more things.
That's right. So neuroplasticity is a process of taking something where there's duration, path, and outcome, where I'm working hard, I'm thinking hard, maybe it's a hard conversation, maybe it's a business plan, maybe it's a scientific career. And the goal of neuroplasticity is to make things reflexive so you don't have to think about them. Neuroplasticity involves...
That was
sorry,
great.
And then here's him elaborating on the neuroplasticity, the sort of trigger. It's actually a trigger and a relaxation that's essential for that to actually work. So you kind of alluded to that earlier, but that same gentleman, this is him elaborating on that.
Neuroplasticity involves a very strong trigger, and then deep relaxation is when the actual rewiring occurs. And there are exceptions to this, but I should just mention, because it brings us back to an earlier point, that when you think about the tools that people use to enhance focus, Ritalin, Adderall, L-tyrosine, excessive amounts of caffeine, nicotine, those all help with the trigger part, but they don't help with the relaxation part. And so a lot of people don't learn, they just get really good at doing, but they don't actually learn.
Oh my, this is so good. This is a great topic.
Well, we're usually talking about tech, cool inventions, or new stuff like AI and robotics is going to change the world. Well, what if we could let's look at ourselves a little bit first. Like, we're a machine, we're a very complicated chemical factory. What can we do? None of that matters, right? You can make the best technology and all that, but if you're fuzzy minded and can't focus for long periods of time, you're not really enjoying life, right? Like, you're just kind of doing, it's like sitting on the couch and watching TV. That's not good, because you're allowing your brain to just go on autopilot. Yeah, there is some, visual and auditory, but it's like you said, you're assigning that to that sort of autopilot part of your brain. Now, if you're listening to an audiobook with something visual on the TV, maybe they're doing a craft, and you're doing a craft, and you're pedaling one of those little cycle things while you're sitting on the couch, now you're engaging so many different areas of your brain that is providing a therapeutic benefit rather than just sitting on the couch watching TV. So it's all the stuff nobody wants to do. That's what sucks about any of this. Exercise, brain puzzles. It's stuff that you go, I can't be bothered doing that. Like, there's easy things like junk food and TV and social media. You get into that doom scroll where you're just like, next thing you know, it's 2 a.m. and you've not done anything, and you've been, hyper stimulated from staring at your screen for too long. Now you can't sleep. Like he said, we're very good at doing, but we don't learn because we don't do the trigger and the relaxation. And that's a big part of it from the research I've done anyways.
Man, listen, I'm trying. So if you haven't noticed, everyone, this is the kind of thing we can talk about for 6 hours straight, and we will get some of it in there, like some of the stuff that we really want to talk about in there. There's a lot to talk about. I'm going to start with just kind of going with what we just talked about now. I do want to say that the next episode, we're going to talk about some really interesting things about how the brain works, especially when it comes to like relaxation and focus and things like that. So there's a couple books I want to talk about. But now let's talk about what he mentioned in terms of how important relaxation is. So I know that people have heard of the thing where, if you fall asleep listening to like a language, your brain will eventually, like subconsciously, you'll learn that language. This is true. Remember earlier I did say this is kind of a contradiction to what I said earlier about attention, the importance of attention, but you can't do that for kinesthetic activities, not necessarily, unless you're dreaming about it or you're lucid dreaming. You're trying to practice these lucid dreaming techniques to try to train your body to at least imagine the kinesthetic feeling of doing something like running. Runners actually do meditative practices where they visualize themselves running first, and then they go on a run. There's a lot of importance when it comes to this idea of relaxation and especially sleep, because your brain will actually learn more from sleeping if you're working really hard with attention and focus at the thing you're trying to learn. Your brain will learn more from sleeping than it will from actually doing the thing, but it can't do it with like separate from each other. You can't do that separate from each other. So I hope that doesn't sound contradictory, and I don't know exactly the science behind that specifically, but the psychology is there. Look, Google it if you will, or look at psychology today. It's there. Your brain actually learns a lot more, reorganizes, develops those pathways while you sleep from that intense activity, that intense focused activity from when you're awake. It's really important to do those things in conjunction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got some stuff here on avoid these things to protect your brain. One of them is sleep, but I've got a couple quick slides before we do that. Just some basic ways to promote. So learn a language, expand vocabulary, use your non-dominant hand, right lefty if you're not a lefty. Obviously, artwork, anything creative, reading, any new skills, puzzles, mindfulness, meditation. Learn more, stress less, eat well. It's all the stuff we know, but it actually makes a difference in our brains, not just our physical. So yes, you might make it to 80 without having a heart attack or stroke, but what condition is your brain in? Even if you walk every day and do exercise, you need to stimulate your mind. I mean, if you look at things like dementia, essentially it's loss of memory. You get so bad that you don't recognize your kids and your wife and your family. It's essentially your memory. It doesn't remember where you are, why you're here, what it's doing. I mean, it's sad. They call it the long goodbye because it's not a physical thing. It's not like cancer where it's growing. It's just a slow and steady decline of the mind. And I knew a gentleman, he was quite elderly and his wife had it very bad. And he went out for a social function one evening. And when he came home, the door was locked with they had a key, but there was an additional lock with no key. And he was knocking on the door and she called the police saying somebody was breaking into the house and she was looking out the window at him. She didn't recognize him after 40 years of marriage and called the cops. Thought he was breaking in. Like, it's really very sad. And it's something we hope we never have to deal with. So why not do something, give yourself the best possible chance. We only got one body, one brain, and one kick at the can, right? Maybe there's other lives, past lives, future lives, but it won't be this life. It won't be this family, these people, these memories, these experiences. So why not do what you can to prolong it? Doesn't mean you have to give up everything you like and completely become a whole new person. But if you use it, you lose it. Neurons that grow together, fire together, right? They wire together, they fire together. Right. And I have a video clip of what that actually looks like. So let's fire that. This is what it looks like when your brain is learning something new. The whole purpose of this episode is to encourage exactly this type of cell development. I mean, that's basically this is what it looks like. They slowly start to want to form these connections and networks. Things get easier. They get rewarding. You'll start getting dopamine release when you do exercise or any of these things. It'll be fun. It won't feel like something that's difficult. But like anything, if you do it for 2 weeks and say, it doesn't work, you're absolutely right. The mental position is that this isn't going to work. So you're not going at it with the right salience, as we covered earlier. You got to be in the right state of mind, the right attitude, the right outlook. Your mind is the greatest healer you have, but it all comes from a position of encouragement and belief and positivity. The universe and law of attraction will give you what you're looking for. So if you see the universe as negative and I'll never, get healthy, I'll never get in shape, I'll never lose weight, you're absolutely right. You will not, because you've taken that position. You've assigned that value, and now it's one of your core beliefs. It takes a bit of unwiring and different thinking to get out of that. And it will take some undoing before any real work will start, especially if you've been that way for years. Like, if you've been negative for 60 years, don't think doing crosswords is going to fix you overnight. It's understanding fundamentally that the way I think and feel about things is a choice. Doesn't make the world a negative place. It's just you believe it's a negative place. It's your opinion. Maybe bad things have happened to cause that opinion. Maybe it's rightfully warranted, but you will suffer as long as you believe that that's what you deserve. Until you start telling yourself that I don't want to feel this way, I don't need to feel this way, and you start seeking ways to avoid that, nothing will ever change. So initially, this has to come from that spark. Maybe somebody watching this show goes, yeah, you're right. I've been wanting to do stuff like that, been wanting to take care of my mental health. I'm going to get started. So if we can spark even one person to take this a little more seriously, if we can prevent one person from getting early onset dementia, we did our job. So I'm happy as far as that goes.
I've got some thoughts, my friend. So
let's hear him, bro.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. There's a book. I have this book. I've read this book over and over again. I used to fall asleep to this book. Judge me. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it's essentially, and I'm going to just kind of condense what I understand about this. There's a lot to that book. It's a really good book. If you haven't read it, please read that book. It's essentially about how small habits, I think it takes like 2 to 3 months for these little habits that you do to change your entire behavior. All of it, like whatever it is that you're doing that's a bad habit, for example, it takes about 90 days or so to change that, to create a new habit. But you have to do it, of course, consistently and with attention. I think I'm going to I'm probably going to like use that a little too much today, but it's important to understand that anything that you do with all of these things we're talking about today to improve neuroplasticity, to improve your memory, to improve how you think and see the world, you need to be repetitive. You need to be focused. You need to do it with intention and attention, meaning if you don't have a vision of the thing that you want, whatever it may be, the way that you want to feel, the way that you want to think, how you want to be in terms of your cognitive functions, if you don't have a vision of that, then you won't get there, or you'll end up somewhere that you didn't expect because you didn't prepare, you didn't have the attention or the vision to see that. There's a technique that I learned a long time ago where it's called a Advanced Civilization Tool Builder. And another one, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of it.
Talking like Sim City here, building civilization.
No, these are visualization techniques to help you to have a vision of what it is you want to see. One of them, the one that I can't remember the name of, maybe I'll think of it eventually, but you try to visualize yourself embodying a person that you see that has the expertise or thinking or behavior or intelligence or skill that you want. And then you put yourself literally physically in the position of that person. You see them, you visualize them in a field. You walk over to them and you embody that person. You walk into the body of that person, and you have to imagine that you are becoming that person, that you are them now. You've essentially merged consciousnesses, and you can adopt the behaviors and essentially the abilities of that person that you want, the skills of the person you want. You do this over time. And eventually, whatever your mind, your brain, whether you read about that person, you watch videos about that person, whatever your mind has collected, the information they've collected, collected about that person, you will ultimately embody those behaviors over time. And then the other one is the Advanced Civilization Tool Builder. This is a little bit more creative. It gives your brain the ability to imagine, without you taking part in it, a civilization that teaches you how you want to be. And this is the part about introspection that I think is important. I don't know if we're ready for that now. If you have something else you wanted to go over first, but the Advanced Civilization Tool Builder, you will imagine yourself being greeted by an alien, if you will, a part of a civilization of people that has exactly the kind of life, behaviors, and everything that you want. But you don't control that visualization. You have to let your mind imagine what that might be like. This alien race, they walk you through their life. They take you into a day of it. They walk you into their home and see their family, their culture, their society. And that right there gives you a vision of how you see the world the way you want it to be, the way that you imagine it yourself. Be the change you want to see, so to speak. It helps you to achieve that. And these are really cool techniques that I used to do all the time. And I don't do them as much anymore, of course. It's been a long time actually since I've done any of them, at least these two techniques specifically. But they work. They absolutely work. You have to definitely do them.
I've heard that Tiger Woods used to do the same thing. He would envision the 40-foot putt before striking the ball. He'd see the angle, the run, the slope of the green. Visually, he would make it so that he's watching himself make that putt. And I've actually done this myself. I like to golf. I remember maybe 10 years ago, I was playing with a couple of buddies. I had a ridiculously long putt that I would never make. And I was just jokingly saying, it's going in. Watch this, boys. It's going in. And I must have said it's going in about 30 times. You know, as I'm lining up, hey, it's going in. It's going in. You guys are going to laugh, but it's going in. And I landed. I sunk the putt. And I've never landed. I think it was like 40 to 50 feet. I didn't measure. Ridiculous. Sloping green, like out of a video game. The bloody thing dropped. I've never done it before. I've never done it since. So I either got lucky or my conscious mind of believing I could do it and envisioning what it would look like. Maybe that helped. I don't know. Even on a silly game level, we can start to get good at these things, right? And professional athletes always looking for that. Not even that 1% advantage. If I can get a 0.5%, that still means the difference between coming first and second.
Yep.
How do I find that? And this is very important in terms of training your brain and also the mindset. Picture an Olympian. These people train for almost 4 years. I mean, it's 4 years from Olympics to Olympics, right? But it starts the minute the first Olympics end, and they don't stop until the next Olympics begins. Think about the positive mindset you need to have, the belief, the focus, repetition, consistency. They don't take a week off. They don't have cheat days. I mean, they're a different species of human, really, because they dedicate everything. That's all they like, literally eat, sleep, breathe. You've heard people say that. You make it. If you really want to compete at that level, that's what it takes. Cycling is the same thing. You got to be so physically fit. And now we're talking about cycling outside the world of doping. Cycling is a very dirty sport. Mr. Lance Armstrong proved that. And other coaches have been caught. You know, it's essentially everybody's doing it. It's just who gets caught and who doesn't, right? But that's a sport where you can never stop. If you don't cycle 5 hours a day, every single day, you don't have that same advantage that the guy who's cycling 7 hours a day every day and has been doing it for the last, 4 years in a row, nonstop. You got to beat that guy on the day that it counts. You don't get a do-over. If you wake up after a crappy sleep, it's race day, right? Like you train your brain to get into that zone, regardless if you had a crappy night's sleep, a poor meal, your stomach's not feeling great, you got in a fight with your wife, whatever happens, you become this machine that can tune that out and just perform. Guys like Usain Bolt, you never see them trip and fall or screw up a race or accidentally come last. They nail it every friggin' time. They've just become a machine. And the best athletes in the world that we have can deliver. They don't get injured as much. They're just working with more precision. They're more efficient. They're in better health. When they do get hurt, they spring back. And I believe a lot of that stems from mental conditioning and training your brain. So I got a quick clip on you can train your brain. A lot of this has also to do with attitude, not just getting better at a task or a skill or, an art or something you're trying to improve, but just happier life in general, your outlook, your overall opinion of how I feel. We can control that.
You can train your brain. So basically what you can do is for every negative thought that your brain gives you, task it with the task of giving you a positive one.
Or 2 positive ones.
9, I say.
9?
Yeah, because in reality, if you look at life around you, more than 90% of life is okay. For your brain to contribute more than that as negative is not fair, right? So if your brain says, hey, by the way, this studio is a little warm, what else is about this studio? My friend Steve is there. The lighting is perfect. The crew is amazing. The coffee is not that bad. You guys got me honey. I can go on for hours, right? And the idea is by training your brain to look for that, what are you actually doing? You're firing the neurons together.
Gratitude.
And exactly, your book basically says it is the answer. Huh? The answer is when you find gratitude, that gratitude journal that you kept for years every day, what was it telling you? It was training your brain to look for what's right. Your brain, every night that you did it, was like, okay, it seems he's going to be asking to call his mom a lot more often. It seems he's going to be asking for good things a lot more often. I might as well observe them. I might as well find them. And so, yes, you said some people are impossible to rewire. They're impossible to rewire if they've been practicing a certain wiring for 21 years. It's not going to take 21 seconds to rewire anyone, including me and you. It will take 21 days, let's say, for your brain to recognize I need different wiring. And it will take maybe 21 months for your brain to say, and I don't need the old wiring anymore. And the game here is, can you actually keep doing that? Can you keep tapping your finger in a way that trains your brain that this is the wiring that you need?
I love that. Find 9 good things for every 1 crappy thought you have. So if I'm feeling negative today, hey, I didn't get hit by a bus today. I wasn't diagnosed with cancer. My family didn't get sick. All my loved ones are around me. I have a beautiful house and home and food and clean water now that we got some cool water machines, like life is good. Why not? Like he said, 90% of life, in his opinion, is good. So I'm not going to let my brain assign more than 10% negativity, because my core belief is that 90% is good. So if I have a negative thought, that's the 10%. Now I got to come up with the 90. So don't let your brain get in the habit of just focusing on the 10. Task it with giving you 9 other things you feel good about, right? It's a subtle brainwashing. Yeah. Your brain knows what's up. You can't BS your brain, but you can anybody can be indoctrinated. Look at cults. You can take brilliant people and, malnourish them, sleep deprive them. You can use external circumstances to brainwash people. But essentially, we have all brainwashed ourselves into the opinions, biases, and beliefs that we have. We have repeated those things to ourselves enough times that now we believe this is who I am, this is how I feel, and I'm justified because this, and this happened. So we keep ourselves in that rumination, in that loop of what you expect is what you get. You get what you tolerate. If you're working and none of your workers listen to you or do what you're asking them to do you tolerate it? Are you leading by example? Is it a byproduct of your leadership? Is it them? Right? Like, look outside. Stop worrying about it's everybody else. Most of the time, it's you, it's me, it's us. It's not everybody else. And even if somebody cuts you off in traffic and you say that guy's an idiot, it doesn't actually make him an idiot. You just went into that zone of being somebody who assigns labels, because that helps you deal with the fact that you're mad. That's your quick go-to reflex, right? And I think if you start paying more attention to our behaviors, even subtle little things like that, why does something so stupid have the ability to ruin my whole day? Why are you allowing something so stupid to ruin your whole day? How much value are you assigning on your happiness? Because if you value your happiness up here, I'm not going to let some idiot in the drive-through cut me off, ruin that. Like, that's way more valuable to my health than the poison I'm going to create, and that feeling in my stomach, that hatred, that anger, all that rage, that is literally toxic to your body, right? They say stress kills. It's even subtle stresses like that. It's not necessarily, repeated or constant. It's the stress we put ourselves under. If you let everything bother you throughout the day, when you come home, your nerves are shot. You don't eat right. You don't sleep right. Your bathroom patterns get all thrown out. Like, it's easy to fall into addictive personalities to sort of soothe the mind and soothe the body and how it feels. It all goes wrong, but maybe it starts with just how you think and what value you assign to positive or negative in your very own life. And that's the whole purpose of meditation too, is to give yourself those other options, to turn down the noise. We all have Beethoven playing, but we got Metallica on full blast. You can't hear the Beethoven. Turn off the Metallica. Let your brain do what its natural, blessed abilities are. And like, you even chat with people like Deb Shakti, who's a quantum healer. Debs is brilliant, but Debs doesn't do anything. The people do the healing. Debs helps the people get to that state of being calm, being relaxed, feeling safe, feeling no judgment. That's where that healing comes from. The sympathy, the empathy, the love, the openness, all of that gives people the right conditions where they can foster their own healing. So it sounds like, maybe pie in the sky to a lot of people, but think about all these esoteric practices that have been around for thousands of years. That's all they've been designed to do. Help us understand this and deal with the bad data and move forward with that life we really want to see. You can manifest. It's just a matter of believing you can first, and then getting out of the bad habits, and then forming new habits, all of which take time in their own phase. Again, you've been doing bad habits for 20 years, thinking a certain way. It's going to take a while to get out of that. But if you don't do it, you'll never get out of that. And that is what you were going to look at every day for the rest of your life. So motivation's got to come from us, because you can't BS the brain. The brain knows. Brain knows you don't want to go to the gym today. It's going to make you feel tired, don't want to get out of bed. It's going to make your workout suck, rather than giving yourself that positivity of, no, when I go to the gym, I sleep better. I felt amazing the other day. I beat my personal best. Like today, I want to run 0.1 of a mile longer. If I can't, that's cool, but I'm going to try. If you try 10 times out of 10, you'll hit it 9 times out of 10, you know? So you miss every pitch you don't swing at, basically. So don't be scared. Try some of this out. It works. I've personally used it in my life. I know you have, Marquise. We do a little bit of this neuroplasticity every time we do a new episode. We know nothing about the topic. We consume hours of material. We read a dozen books, science papers, videos. We have to find these little clips and all that. We take all that in, and now we have a much better understanding of that. In as little as 2 weeks, we know more than the average bear because we put in the time, we put in the effort. So anybody can do this. Just find something you like. That makes it a hell of a lot easier. If you like the subject, like if you're into woodworking or cars, like read a new thing on cars, go and like tinker with a car, tear down a carburetor and rebuild a damn thing. Like, I don't know, whatever is going to make it not feel like work. Same with exercise. Play a sport. You don't want to go to the gym? Play floor hockey, play soccer, go do what's that faux tennis everybody's doing now? What is it? It's not real tennis, but pickleball.
I don't know.
It's like a giant racket with a plastic ball. It's like mini tennis, so you don't have to run too much.
I don't know.
Okay, everybody out there, you know what pickleball is.
If you know what it is,
help me
hit us
out
up in the chat. Hit us up in the chat, guys. I don't know what that is.
Pickleball if it's going to make you a happier person. That's the lesson of today's show.
Yeah. So there's a lot. Again, there's so much to talk about. I never know where to start. I'm going to try to kind of talk about a couple of things that I just want to get them out before either I forget or new things come up, and then we talk about those things because there's so much to talk about. So the first thing that I want to mention, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I want to go into it a little bit further, is a 10,000 hour rule, which was a concept that was done or was essentially developed through a study in the early 90s by Anders Ericsson. And he has a team of course, scientists who worked on this study where they had these violin students at the Music Academy in Berlin, and they found that most of these students were accomplished. And they were accomplished after accumulating over 10,000 hours of practice by the age of 20. Now, you don't have to be 20 or younger than 20 to get that 10,000 hour. But the greatest benefit, at least in this study, was at that age. Was by the age of 20, they had those 10,000 hours of a skill put in. They put in that work. So here's how he sees this. Malcolm Gladwell. This is another guy who he took these findings and he presented it in outliers as sort of like this threshold, which was how you can achieve greatness in any field. So according to this guy, according to Gladwell, the key to success in any of these domains was to practice a specific task. Remember, I said this earlier, with focus and attention for 10,000 hours. And if you could do this, whatever skill, whatever skill you want to do with that 10,000 hours, you will master that technique. There was a book that I read once called Mastery. I have a lot of favorite books and movies and TV shows. So if you're one of the people that catches me saying, this is one of my favorite, I'm that guy. Mastery, that book is one of my favorite books of all time. I used to listen to it at work to try to get this idea, to get the ideas and the mindsets and the thinking into my consciousness, because it was essential for me having mastery, mostly over myself, where I wanted to be able to be a more effective person in life. How can I be more effective? But one of the principles in mastery was, of course, the 10,000 hour rule. Another book that I really love that I think you should all read is called The Laws of Power. Hold on one second. Let me just, let me see here. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Freaking fantastic book. I should put these books, now that I'm mentioning them, I should put them in, send them to you so you can kind of give people like a resource for them or something like that. Because
I'm just doing the math on this. How many hours did you say it was? 20,000 hours?
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
So I plugged it in wrong here, but if let's at 20,000 hours, That equates to 833 days, which would be 2.2 years. So cut that in half because my math is wrong. So basically 1.1 years, you're basically 12 to 13 months is the equivalent of 10,000 hours. So not as long as it sounds, but essentially if you do the same thing over and over, 21 days to break an old pattern, minimum of at least 21 days to begin wiring a new pattern, and then upwards of 10,000 hours to master that craft or whatever, right?
Yeah, you mentioned the 21 days. That's for a skill. Just so that we, in case anybody, because I know there are some people that are very analytical, and you guys are very smart people in the chat. 21 days is to learn a new skill. The 60 to 90 days is to break a bad habit. So if you heard me say earlier that there's 60 to 90 days, that's for breaking a bad habit. And like Louis was talking about just now, that 21 days is for learning a new skill.
Right.
But that's not mastery. Mastery comes from the 10,000 hour rule, or the 10,000 hour. There's a lot of skeptics.
Like look at a Japanese samurai sword maker. Yeah, there's guys that can make a sword after a year of, being in a forge class and learning how to make metal.
Right.
But the guy who literally works the same piece of steel for 3 years has like a personal, intimate relationship with that steel. It's almost like an outer body experience. Him and the steel are one. He looks at it that way. He takes it with that level of serious intent and manifestation, all that. And they make the greatest swords, the purest steel, the sharpest swords. Some of these swords are many thousands of dollars. Japanese masters. There's only a handful of them that are at that highest level. Some of them you can't even find their swords anymore because, they weren't doing it for fame or fortune. Japanese are very good at this whole do it good, not because you should, but it's just that's the only way to do it, right?
Yeah.
It's the honor.
They call it, think about the idea of Zen, right? And I'm not as up. So if there's any meditation masters out there who are like, he's misusing the term Zen. Listen, I read a book about Zen, a couple of books about Zen. Ultimately, what I understand Zen to be is essentially a focus. Whatever your focus is, whatever and focus is a whole nother topic to talk about. But whatever that thing is that puts you in the flow state, which is another topic that we could talk about some other time. There's so many different things. I feel like we have all these different things that we can talk about that are involved in this, and we're sharing them with you. And anybody who feels like we're going at 1,000 miles per hour, it's because there's so much stuff we have to share with you. Sure. But the flow state, the Zen, getting into your Zen or that flow state is super important when you're thinking about this 10,000 hour rule, or the idea of learning a new skill, or the idea of neuroplasticity. And when I mentioned about attention and focus, that flow state, which we can talk about how to get into that flow state next episode, because I got a great one for you guys next time. That flow state is what's going to help you naturally, kind of just coalesce with the thinking and patterns and the neurological, pathways that are needed to develop the mastery of these skills. You can't just do something passively. I mentioned this earlier, and expect to have mastery over that thing.
Sure.
You'll be good at it. Maybe you'll be really good at it, better than the average bear, as they say. But you will not develop mastery unless you have that focus, that attention. And even more so is the idea of the flow state. The idea that you can, Diana Pasolka talks about how, which I'm not sure if you guys know who she is, but she's an author and a researcher who studies religion and stuff like that, but she's big in the UFO, UAP, whatever field. But Diana Pasolka talks about the idea of developing rituals in your life to have a better quality of life. There's a lot of techniques you can use, like hypnosis and the visualization techniques and the learning things that we talked about today, that if you do them, yes, your conscious mind, the part of you that's paying attention, is focused on something, is attentive and in that flow state or focused. You're doing those things consciously. You're remembering them. You're putting in the energy and effort. But then there's that extra step, which is the flow state. If you're not passionate, the key to higher level thinking and learning and intelligence is flow. It's passion. If you don't have passion for the thing you're trying to learn, you will be good at it. You may be really good at it, but you'll never develop that extra level of mastery, that exceptional skill level that people are like, how in the world does that person do that? Some people suggest, and when I say some people, I mean philosophers and thinkers, people who are involved in the personal development, field. They claim that the only difference in theory, between a regular person and Einstein, aside from the obvious increase in brain function from Einstein, is passion. He just like, you ever hear somebody who's a genius about something? They're like, all I do is think and eat. And I don't even want to eat. All I want to do is this thing because I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah.
Eating and sleeping and everything else is a distraction from the thing that I love. If you love something, if you have passion for it, and you're giving that attention, and you're putting in the 10,000 hours, that is how you develop that exceptional mastery of a thing, not just any one of these things.
And that's where the growth comes from. So let's take a guy working in a factory who's been putting a screw here, a cable here, and a clip. He's been doing that 1,500 times a day for 20 years straight. He will do it faster than you or I every single time, just because he's gotten so skilled, his movements, he could do it with his eyes closed. That doesn't mean he loves it and goes home and goes, man, I can't wait to go to work tomorrow where I can put in those 3 screws in that clip again. So there's a difference between being good at something through repetition and having it actually stimulate your mind. And to your point, that's where the passion and that incentive comes from, that conditioned mindset of, I'm doing this for this reason. I like it. I want to absorb more and absolutely everything I can. You know, people that are gardening buffs, they have 1,000 books on gardening. They've read them all and they still continue to read them all. And they're watching shows and like they're taking in everything they can. They're going to shows, magazines, social media. Their whole life becomes this thing that they love. That is where the stimulation comes from. Not something you're just doing. Mindless repetition does not accomplish that. And particularly children and athletes, this whole idea of neuroplasticity, because children are developing. So if you can develop good habits, good sort of thought processes early on, that's just going to benefit the kid. And athletes are trying to become better than their fellow human at a very specific task. So they need to condition the brain to take that original conditioning to the next level. So this whole idea of neuroplasticity, very important for kids and athletes. And here's why.
I'm an occupational therapist, and I'm going to explain why it is so important for you and your kids to be doing really hard things and what it has to do with this area of your brain. So this part of your brain is called the anterior cingulate cortex. So basically, the more you do hard things, especially things you don't want to do that will benefit you, the bigger it grows. Research says that it's larger in athletes, like people who are always practicing and constantly showing up when they don't want to. People who say that they have overcome big challenges. And research also says that if you don't consistently push yourself to do hard things, that this part of your brain shrinks. And this is just so crazy because it shows how you can literally change your brain, neuroplasticity, just by changing your habits or changing what you're doing in your daily life. This is why it's so important to challenge yourself and challenge your kids to do hard things to try to achieve, because it's actually affecting your brain and making you healthier. Andrew Huberman and David Goggins did a video about this area of the brain, and it was super cool to hear. And also, if you Google this, a ton of stuff comes up about it. This is your sign to do something hard and achieve your goals in the New Year's, because your health relies on it.
Real quick, I forgot to say earlier when we were watching that video about, focusing on the positive, that guy was Mo Goddard. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but I love his content. I've been watching him since I got involved in this because he talked about AI. By the way, he used to work with Google, so he's a really, he's a very important figure in the tech field. But he also talks about personal development, and she mentioned Gabor Mate, by the way. Just want to throw that out there. Yes. But anyway,
more from Mo Goddard here on The Brain Can Change, just reinforcing the same.
The brain is basically designed to be customized in the early part of life and then to implement those algorithms and that circuitry for the rest of its life. And so the brain can change in adulthood, and it can change provided that there's an emphasis on some perceptual event. So in other words, if you want to change your brain as an adult, let's say you want to be less anxious, you want to learn a new language. The key thing is to bring focus focus to some particular perception of something that's happening during the learning process. And the reason for that is that there's a neurochemical system involving acetylcholine. And it comes from these two little nuclei down in the base of the brain called nucleus basalis. All day long, you're doing things in a reflexive way. But when you do something and you think about it very intensely, acetylcholine is released from basalis at the precise neurons that were involved in that behavior, and it marks those for change during sleep or during deep rest later. Because most people don't realize this, but neuroplasticity is triggered by intense focus, but neuroplasticity occurs during deep sleep and rest.
Sorry, that's Andrew Huberman, I believe.
Yeah, my bad.
That was the Persian guy talking about the tea, the lighting's perfect.
Right.
Yes.
So the Indian guy is Mogaudat. That was Andrew Huberman. And that's so funny because I literally just said that earlier about how your brain actually those connections they're really developed whenever you sleep. Now obviously he had the science behind that much better than I did because he's what is he, a psychologist or whatever? What is he again? I'm sorry. He's a neuroscientist. And by the way, his content is also awesome. He's got tons of content on all kinds of different stuff out there. If you want to get into deeper into this topic, hey, it's there. But yeah, there's so much. Oh my gosh, I have more to say, by the way. I don't know if you have anything else to show. I don't want to.
I got two more things. So I got a couple
I'll wait.
Go ahead. Avoid these things to protect your brain. And then something I found to be motivational and inspirational, which is our whole purpose here. You notice there's no commercials on our show. We're not saying buy our mugs, buy our shirt. There's no merch. There's no money in this. This is because we're passionate. At the end of our days, at least we can say, hey, we made noise about topics nobody was making noise about. We gave people some tips and pointers that was not readily available elsewhere. We shared our passion for science and all these things to improve your life. We shared it with people. That's the whole reason we do this show. So we appreciate all your positive feedback everybody's been giving us. It's been great. Show's only 4 months old. We already have a sponsor and we're on 5 platforms and all the rest. So we do also have a cool new website. So if anybody wants to check out our website, it's quantumletterpodcast.com. Appreciate you. You can contact us if you've got any show suggestions, guest suggestions. If you'd like to appear on the show, you're a scientist, you're, Bob Lazar. That's where. So Bob, if you're listening, go to our website and click contact us, Bob Lazar. We'll never get Bob Lazar on the show. But yeah, leave us a comment. We do love reading them. We respond to everybody's comment. Give us a thumbs up if you like today's show. So let me get to our last couple clips here before we say goodnight to our friends. These are things you should avoid to protect your brain. Regardless of your age, avoid these things.
Here are 3 things that I avoid as a neuroscientist in order to protect my brain. Number 1 is glucose spikes. Glucose spikes actually contribute to aging, both brain aging and wrinkles. And they also contribute to mood swings, memory impairment, and less neuroplasticity in the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is an area of the brain really important for learning and memory, so you do not want to have less neuroplasticity there. This is especially important for your first meal of the day because you are breaking a fast. The second thing I avoid is fried foods. A study of 18,000 people found that diets high in fried foods are linked to lower scores in memory and cognition. And number 3 is bright lights at night. Bright light at night impairs melatonin release, which is going to mess with our sleep. And quality sleep is one of the most important things that we can do for our brain. But also any type of light at night, and not just blue light, impairs dopamine release. And this happens due to the activation of a pathway in the brain that includes the lateral habenula. And number 4 is skip exercise. Physical exercise actually builds your brain, and it also triggers the release of endocannabinoids, which are compounds made by the body that bind to the same receptors as when you... But anyway, exercise is also good for that reason because it's natural pain relief. I hope this helps. Love you.
So exercise is the same as smoking a joint, folks. You heard it from a neuroscientist. You want to get that cannabinoid receptor rocking. That's how you do it. Go on a nice long run. Tell that to Snoop Dogg.
Snoop Dogg,
Snoop Dogg outrun at this point.
I bet there's no way that man's running. He barely walks fast. That was fantastic.
No offense, Snoop Dogg. You're welcome.
No, we love Snoop. We love. Meta has it has a dungeon. What is it? A Dungeons and Dragons AI where it's Snoop Dogg that plays Dungeons and Dragons with you in Facebook Messenger. Try it out, y'all. But anyway, there's a couple some of those scientific terms I actually didn't know about, those physiological terms of the brain.
Yeah.
I don't remember them from school or anything, so I apologize, everyone. But this is stuff that we're learning about still. I'm just a lay person, if you will, or researcher, whatever. Yeah. I'm not a
We're
scientist.
not PhD scientists.
Yeah,
We're just
there's so
regular
much stuff.
dudes that like this stuff. We
Yeah.
fact check a bunch of stuff. A lot of the material doesn't make it into the show because throughout the course of the couple of weeks we're researching, we find other information that says, well, that's old, or we used to think that, now we don't. Studies have
Yeah.
changed, or that was just flat out wrong. There's been a few times we're ready to present a show, like I think superconductors with that LK99. Just to
Yeah,
come
yeah.
find out it was a bogus scam. It doesn't work.
I'm
So
still
the
not
last thing we wanna
sold on it
do-
totally. being
What's
bugged.
that?
I don't know, man. I'm still.
I know you think LK99, they're just trying to silence these guys. Watch our superconductors episode. You'll get where we're going with these folks. But last thing I got is from a man I respect very highly, Joe Dispenza. He's an outside thinker. He talks about basically opening up the potential of your mind, your consciousness, the way you think, the way you feel, the direct impact changing that can have on your everyday life. This is about an 8-minute long clip, but that'll take us right to the end of our show, and then we'll get your final thoughts, Marquis. So grab your coffee, folks. Let's spend 8 minutes with our buddy Joe Dispenza.
The concept of people setting aside precious moments from their lives to embark on a journey of self-discovery. It's truly fascinating to witness individuals challenge themselves to step out of their comfort zones, to transcend their past and venture into the realm of the unknown. Often, the unknown can be a daunting territory for many as it lacks the familiarity and certainty that the past offers. This unfamiliarity can be intimidating, causing individuals to shy away from envisioning a future that isn't supported by their senses or past experiences. Breaking free from this mental confinement requires a bold leap into the uncharted waters of uncertainty. It's about embracing the discomfort that accompanies this unexplored territory and using it as a catalyst for growth and transformation. This pivotal moment when an anxiety or frustration starts to creep in signifies a profound opportunity for self-regulation. It's a moment of choice, a fork in the road where one can either succumb to the pull of the past or break free from the chains of routine. In this remarkable journey, each victory, no matter how small, accumulates like precious jewels in a treasure chest. The focus gradually shifts away from material wealth, physical health, or external circumstances, and redirects towards the remarkable evolution of self. Overcoming the limitations of the old self paves the way for a profound metamorphosis. A transformation into a newer, more authentic version of oneself. This transitional phase, often referred to as the void, is a period of relative stillness and uncertainty. Navigating through this void demands resilience, determination, and an unwavering commitment to keep moving forward. It's akin to forging a path through an uncharted forest, where the destination is shrouded in mystery, but the journey itself becomes a testament to the strength of character and the power of the human spirit. This journey of self-discovery is akin to a mental and an emotional pilgrimage, guided by the principles of the quantum field. It requires a paradigm shift, unlearning age-old programming that has conditioned us to believe that change can only occur through tangible actions in the physical world. However, the key to true transformation lies in harnessing the potential of the quantum field, allowing us to create from the realm of pure potential, rather than being bound by the limitations of the material world. This paradigm shift necessitates a deliberate mental rehearsal, an intentional rewiring of the brain. Each day's end becomes an opportunity for introspection, a moment to review and evaluate the day's experiences. How did I navigate challenges? When did I stumble into old patterns? What triggered my emotions? This self-inquiry is a powerful tool for self-awareness and growth, enabling us to identify the moments when we slipped into the past or allowed routine to dictate our actions. Mentally rehearsing alternative responses to challenging situations becomes an art form. It's about installing new neurological pathways that reflect the desired future, thereby transforming the brain into a map of possibilities rather than a mere record of the past. This process demands conscious effort, requiring us to disconnect from external distractions, quiet our minds, and dedicate time to practice. As we progress, we become attuned to signs of emotional turbulence, the subtle shifts that threaten to pull us back into the past. Armed with the tools of self-regulation, we can intercept these moments of emotional upheaval, guiding ourselves back to a state of coherence between the brain and the heart. This conscious reconnection to the energy of the envisioned future serves as an anchor, preventing us from spiraling into negative emotions and maintaining a steady trajectory towards our goals. The initial stages of this journey require immense energy and dedication, as staying consciously aware demands concerted effort. It necessitates disconnecting from the noise of the external world, temporarily shutting down distractions, and cultivating a sacred space for personal transformation. Yet, with persistence and unwavering determination, this state of conscious awareness becomes a second nature, guiding our actions and emotions with an inherent wisdom. This transformative journey ultimately leads us to a profound realization. The true measure of success lies not in accumulated wealth, physical possessions, or even external relationships. Instead, it's about the profound shift that occurs within us. It's about shedding the layers of our former selves, emerging as beings of authenticity, resilience, and unwavering self-love. But as we bask in the abundance of our inner growth, we encounter a crucial turning point. The achievement of personal dreams and desires naturally triggers a question that transcends the self. How can I contribute to the world? This shift from self-centered aspirations to a desire for meaningful impact underscores the evolution of consciousness that this journey instigates. Tools we employ on this voyage may vary: vision boards, mental rehearsals, emotional elevation. But their purpose is singular: to propel us into a state of being that aligns with our envisioned future. Whether we associate abundance with material symbols or a profound sense of contentment, the key is to create a visceral emotional connection with that state of being. By immersing ourselves in the elevated emotion of our future reality, we dissolve the barrier between our current self and our desired self. In this process, we redefine our relationship with time. We cease to be prisoners of the past, trapped in the cycle of old memories and familiar experiences. Instead, we become creators of our own destiny, designing our future through the potent combination of intention and emotion. We transform our thoughts into the vocabulary of the brain and our feelings into the vocabulary of the body, crafting a harmonious state of being that resonates with the future we're crafting. The journey toward this state of conscious evolution demands consistent effort, yet it's through these efforts that we carve a path to our truest, most abundant selves. The struggles, challenges, and triumphs that mark this path become treasured milestones, each contributing to the mosaic of our personal growth. These defining moments, these instances of self-correction, represent our most valuable possessions, for they hold the key to our transformation and offer a glimpse into the profound impact we can have on the world around us. In the end, as we stand at the precipice of our dreams, we gaze back upon the tapestry of our existence. Every moment of overcoming, every instance of self-regulation, every triumph over the old self, they all blend together into a symphony of evolution. Just as those who have experienced transcendental insights find no desire to alter their past, we too come to cherish the challenges that propelled us toward our future. Our past becomes a teacher and our journey a testament to the extraordinary power that lies within us. And so as we embark on this voyage of self-discovery, let us remember that it's not merely about acquiring wealth or achieving external success. It's about becoming the architects of our destiny, sculpting our reality from the limitless potential of the quantum field. As we navigate the intricacies of our inner landscape, may we find the courage to step into the unknown, to embrace discomfort, and to transcend the limitations of the past. Through this journey, we emerge as creators, visionaries, and pioneers of our own evolution, forever guided by the transformative magic of our own conscious awareness.
And that would be Meditation with Quantum Letter Podcast, hosted by Marquise Williams and Louis Bourget. No, that's what that was very meditative.
What do you say to that? I mean, that's absolutely bang on, though. You can manifest exactly what you want, but people are looking for the quick and easy. Nobody wants to do the work. Nobody wants to identify what's uniquely, going on in their psyche that makes them feel the way they feel, the bias they have. You need to get obsessed with the fact that you want to shed the old self equally as obsessed of this is the new self that I see for myself, that I envision. This is where I want to go. I'm going to put as much time and effort identifying when I slip and making conscious efforts to fix them, doing the work. This is not a fast fix, but it is a fix nonetheless. When you look at people like the Dalai Lama or Deepak Chopra, or people that just have a very calm aura about them, it's because they understand that. And people that have had transcendental either meditation or near-death experiences, which we're going to be covering in a few episodes coming up. That's a little teaser. Get ready for that. But people that have gone through that, they come back with an overwhelming feeling of everything is good. I am loved. I am perfect. So is everybody else. To hell with materialism. We need to help people. And how do we do that? And that's an overwhelming similar thing that all people who have had near-death experiences or in surgeries and then have memories of seeing, like, floating above their own body and seeing the doctors do that. Whatever type of experience it was, even if it was just a lucid dream, a very strong meditation session, some info that you got from somewhere, some download, the overwhelming feeling is we need to help. We need to be good to each other. It's all love. It's all good. It's the sort of the dissolving of materialism and all that stuff that we've been programmed and trained that this is important. When you find what's actually important, you don't even want to go back to that. You don't miss it. It's not a painful thing to shed that old former avatar, because the new avatar is amazing. And that's as creative as your imagination can get as to what that avatar looks like. So that's about all I got, Marquise. We'll give you the final thought, my man.
So I want to say a couple things. First of all, there's some things in there that I don't have enough expertise to talk about, like the quantum realm and so forth. I'm still not well versed in the idea of the quantum to really get into the weeds of that. But I think I always imagine that as the part, if we're thinking about how that relates to our attention. How do you think about the quantum? Think about it as a subconscious mind. When you want something to happen, and you hypnotize yourself and you say that you want it through affirmations and through the intention of your mind and so forth, the projections and visualizations, that's kind of where if you will, I envision that as the way to access the quantum, the part of I don't know, the interconnectedness of reality itself and everything inside of it.
I think it's the power of intention. So when you look at things like the slit test, where they fire these little photo ions through, it shows that the art of observing gave an intention to that particle to behave a certain way. Without that intention, it was just potential energy. It didn't have form. So harnessing, to me anyway, what it means when people say, harness the quantum world for your own development, it's believing that first it's possible. It's envisioning it, trying to physically manifest it. I want to be this type of person. What would my day look like? What would be some of the things I would do differently? What are some of the things I don't want to do anymore? Having meditation sessions, imagining, essentially is giving the future particles the intention that you want to see. And as the late Dr. Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, physically change at a quantum level. So that's what I understand.
I believe
saying,
because
I have to believe that it is possible, because that's the first step. Believing that you deserve more, you can create more, you have the tools at your ability. You were a perfect vessel to do this, designed to do this, and this is your purpose. Even if you're 80 starting now, that's exactly how it was supposed to be. Let's get to the work, like just always have an overwhelmingly positive thing. There is no good or bad when it comes to this. It's just a matter of when you want to pay more attention. And when you get to the point that you don't like the status quo, you will just naturally do that. You will be looking for things. Some people turn to alcohol and drugs. Other people turn to meditation and ways of working on their brain. But essentially, if you don't deal with the traumas, the alcohol and drugs just suppress it, but they don't get you out of it. There is no shortcut. Deal with what it is. And I recommend everybody get some type of a counselor, therapy, somebody who can give you unbiased opinions, maybe give you a different way of looking at it, somebody who won't offend you like your spouse would, or your sibling, your parents. If your parents give you advice, you take it as judgment or any of the baggage you had from the upbringing and knowing these people your entire life. When it's a total stranger saying, well, hey, I understand that, some of my other patients have thought about it this way. Have you ever thought about it that way? It lets you off the hook to do the work and to be vulnerable with a stranger. And some people will tell a stranger stuff that they won't tell their most loved confidant, like their spouse. There's pride reasons, habit reasons. There's a bunch of reasons. It could be male chauvinism. I don't want to show weakness, or I don't cry in front of my wife. There could be all that. But everybody should have somebody to talk to and basically address why, when you don't feel great, why don't you feel great? What is it specifically? I think a lot of times we think it's one thing or a combination of things. We think it's our job, our relationship, our lack of abundance, lack of whatever, but it's that belief in shortages that will continue to give you more shortages. If you believe that you have everything you need to do whatever you need, you'll start to see that play out in your life. If you believe you're at a deficit, you'll always feel shortchanged. You'll always feel like you're not good enough. You can't do it. Whether you believe you can or you cannot, either way, you're right.
Right. Yep.
So
that was fantastic. Yeah.
What are we covering next show? You got something cool?
Yes. The next show, we're going to talk about brainwave entrainment. Think meditation and music combined together. But it's more complex than that. It's going to be awesome. You guys are going to love it. I guarantee it's a great follow-up to this episode. So I'm really excited to share that with you guys.
And I believe it's the first episode we release in March will be our good friend Mindy Todfest. She is the Oklahoma State Director for MUFON, but she's also a near-death experiencer. I had the opportunity to interview her about a year and a half ago. It was fascinating. The show was mainly about aliens and UFOs, so it was all the MUFON talk, but in that episode, she discussed that she had a near-death experience. This is what happened, and this is how it changed her life. And subsequently, she's written a book about it. And when we were going to talk about NDEs or near-death experiences, I couldn't think of anybody better to come on the show and chat about that with us. So we're going to have an actual person speaking from their own experience, not just us thinking what that would be like to have a near-death experience. So fascinating couple episodes coming up. As always, we're going to head back to the drawing board and work on 4 episodes from now, because that's where we're at in terms of planning. And we look forward to seeing you all again. Again, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, chat room. You guys are amazing. We love you. And check us out every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on our YouTube channel. And if you want to see the replay, check us out Sunday nights on the UnX Network, or go to unxnetwork.com. And we'll see you on the next one. So with that, I want to thank my co-host, Marquise Williams, and everybody out there listening to our show. Thank you for the love and positive feedback. We appreciate all of you, and we wish you all the best in your personal lives. Be good to each other, and we'll see you next week.